No, I mean, I'm sorry if I didn't have that many memories. There was one memory actually after we spoke about the homes that we grew up in. It was the tissue box.
Ah, yes.
So yeah, if anybody knows what I'm talking about, the little tissue box holder thing. Yeah.
The,
So
t-
that's
the
it
the
really. But
decorative tissue box holder. Yeah, because
yeah,
you need a holder for your tissue box.
absolutely.
Amazing.
You're listening to the White Tiger Project. I'm Alia Patan. We're really lucky with this entry to have a participant who has a connection to 3 East African countries: Uganda, Kenya, and Burundi. This recording was made during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and during the biggest civil rights movement in recorded history. At least that's what I've been told. So very exciting and quite triggering times. I had to figure out how to record a phone call for the purpose of this conversation. So if the sound goes up and down and is a bit glitchy, please forgive me. Bear with us.
So we've had a bit of a break from the White Tiger Project for more than a year now, and our next guest is anonymous. They are from East African Asian background, and we'll be talking about that for the next half an hour or so. So welcome. I have
Hello.
hello. So what I was going to ask you is just like 3 questions, and then I guess from each one, just see where the conversation goes. Really, it's
Okay.
really just about like where you are in your life, your connection to East Africa, if you feel at all connected to it, in terms of your cultural heritage, and what that means for you. So, yeah, do you wanna? You can just start.
Okay. So I don't know a lot about my East African heritage, only what I've heard from my parents or like my cousins. And also I'm married to an East African, so I have that. I hear those stories as well from my husband. Um, yeah. What would you like to go
So
first?
when you say he's East African, can you say whereabouts he's from, or can you
Yeah.
say
So he's from Burundi, but he grew up in Kenya.
okay?
So he knows a lot about what happened in Uganda, um, because there were a lot of East African Asians that moved over to Kenya.
Okay, so is he
Yeah.
like native African, or would you say he's African rather than African Asian?
He's native African.
Yeah, so he's black. He would
Yeah.
be considered black in
Yeah.
this country. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what's he discussed with you about it, the
So
situation?
we've talked about mainly really the expulsion of Asians from that country and just what he remembers about it
Hmm.
from when he's spoken to his parents. And yeah, so obviously I'm Asian and he's black, and so it's a bit of a awkward conversation to have because of when I researched about what happened and also what my parents have told me about what happened. Obviously, I've got the Asian side, the Indian side of the story, and then now hearing the African side of the story.
Mm.
So it's just really, really interesting. And to be honest, I felt quite guilty after I heard everything.
Yeah.
So it's and where I'm a British Asian, so I was born in England
Hmm.
in Southampton, and so I've only ever known Southampton. I don't know any other. I don't know India. I don't know Africa. So I can imagine if I was expelled from this country just for like who I was, how would that make me feel? And then hearing that of what happened to my parents, um, and they got booted out, it just made me feel really sad. But then hearing more about it from the other side, the African side, then I can kind of see why it happened. But it's one of those things that I can't sit on either side. I'm kind of on the fence
Mm.
about the
Okay.
whole thing. But it doesn't feel good, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
In terms of the Indian side,
Mm.
what sort of things can you say? I mean, I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but what's the kind of general sentiment and the mood surrounding um, East Africa and generally African politics from, or just like the vibe that you get from your Indian family and Indian friends?
Okay, so going from my own family, when I spoke to my parents about it, um, well, for my mum, she spent her younger part of her life there, but she moved over to India, so she doesn't have that many influences from East Africa.
Okay.
She's taken more from like the Indian side, but for my dad, he spent most of his life there and like took a lot of the influences. And when I talked to him about it, I said to him, "Would you ever go back?" And he's like, "No, there's no point. What's there to go back for?" And from his response, I can see like there's quite a lot of sadness there.
Mm,
Um, so I've asked like a few things about it. Um, and yeah, he obviously is sad about the like leaving there. But and then I have like friends, families like the Gujarati,
yeah.
and I have sort of spoken to them about it, and kind of get their vibe on the whole thing. And I think there's a lot of sort of a bad taste left in their mouth, if you know what I mean,
Right.
about the whole thing. Um, and like when I researched into it more, I can understand why.
And what have you kind of seen through your research?
So it was a lot to do with, so the main reason why the Asians were brought over was to help with making the railway.
Okay.
So I've read this all on Wikipedia. It's my source. Um,
Yeah, and yeah.
yeah, and also my dad did tell me it was because of the railway as well. And they were there. They started businesses, but what happened is they kind of secluded themselves.
Okay.
And there was a lot behind it that they didn't feel safe
Oh, really?
about the Africans.
So there was like a fear and like,
Yeah, like they had their own schools. There's a lot of segregation. Like they had their own schools and
right,
their own,
okay.
and like the way that they would price their things in their shops, was not fair.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
and it was becoming like they were favoring their own people instead of integrating.
Okay.
But that wasn't for everybody. That wasn't for all of them. There
Yeah.
were a small few percentage that got along very well with the native people and did integrate.
Yeah.
It even married and have children
Okay.
and stuff like that and adapted to culture.
Right. But
Um,
for the most
yeah,
part, you would say there was like an economic advantage that Asians had over
yeah,
the native Africans, who,
yeah,
let's, for the sake of it, call them Africans. Um,
yeah.
and okay, yeah. And this is so what you've got from
This is
family,
our
friends, and
yeah, and internet, Wikipedia.
yeah, yeah. I guess um where parents, like, or particularly people from that generation, are not able to speak about these things, like, because it might be really emotional, or they
Yeah,
might have left a bad taste in their mouth, as you say.
yeah.
The internet is the resource that a lot of us go to, and um, like, what was it like for you, if you don't mind, go like sort of talking about what was it like for you growing up? Were there other East African Asians around you, or people like you that you could relate to?
Yeah, I had one good friend, one of my best mates. She a Gujarati, so she had that East African background with her. I think it was her grandparents, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that was the main one, and then there was another family friend actually. I think her mum, and like brothers and sisters. I think they were from East Africa as well.
Okay.
So and it was nice though because when I met another East African Asian, we kind of already understood each other.
Okay, what was that like in comparison to
Yeah.
meeting other Asians?
So like for example, so say if I had a lot of Pakistani friends as well and Bangladeshi friends. So when I met them, they only knew about their home country. So like they would go back to Pakistan or Bangladesh quite often. That was their back home, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
But for the East African Asians, they didn't really have a back home, if you know what I mean. So
Okay.
um, I related to them much more because I felt like we really did see ourselves as like British Asians more than
Yeah.
um very Indian or East African. And that's how I myself feel anyway. I feel like I relate more to my British side, an Indian side rather than an East African
Okay.
side.
Do you know like why you would say you feel more British and Indian than East African? Is it to do with your upbringing or to do with how you choose to identify?
So in regards to the upbringing, me myself,
Mm.
I don't feel like I know much about the East African side. I feel like it's not really spoken about very much. There's a few words here and there and a few cultural things in terms of like how we make food, um, and like maybe some traditions that um maybe I've started to realize they're as like an East African thing.
Uh-huh. Like what?
As like where I'm now married to an African, um, I see that, and that's how we get along. Me and my husband get along because we have that mutual thing. Like for example, just simple things like food, like mogo.
Yeah.
Um, so when I hear
Connects
that he
so
loves
many
mogo, I'm
people.
like, wow, yeah, like we love mogo too. Or just random little words, like a silly word like for we call slippers like chapo, right?
Yeah.
We call them, yeah. And he calls it chambali, and it's just funny because like I'll hear certain Swahili words and I'm like, hang on, was that actually our language or was that a Swahili word as well?
Mm.
So I find that quite funny. um
It is funny, isn't
yeah.
it? When if you're brought up with certain words from any language, like whether you feel like it belongs to you or is part of you, or once you realize where it's from, if there's a sudden disconnect. Like, I was brought up to read Arabic before I understood what the words meant. So
Hmm.
I feel very connected to Arab culture, history, Mughal Empire, all this kind of stuff.
Mm.
But in terms of being Arab, I don't identify. Like even in my ethnicity
Right.
or DNA, I might be Persian somewhere along the line, but I don't
Yeah.
identify. Um, but yet the language is still so I'm so connected to it because I can read it. It's my language,
Yeah.
essentially. So like with Swahili, I guess if I recognize some words, um, but how do you feel like when you say you hear some words, do they resonate a certain way with you? Like, do you feel like it's part of your home language or is I don't know. How does it make you?
Yeah. So yeah, it's familiar to me, so that it makes me feel like home. So when I hear that, it does feel comforting, um, more than, for example, Urdu. So if I hear Urdu, I we don't speak that in my home. Um, so I don't even feel that close to um that kind of culture, like the Pakistani culture or Indian culture. Like with Hindi, I hear it obviously in the Bollywood movies and stuff, and um that does feel familiar to me because I grew up watching Bollywood movies. But when I hear Swahili, it does feel more familiar to me. Similarly, like with Gujarati. So like when my best mate's family speak Gujarati,
Mm,
I feel like, oh, those words, they sound similar to like what we speak at home because my mother tongue, well, not my mother tongue, but what my parents speak is Cockney.
uh-huh.
So that's just a dialect, but that's like another story. But
Where's that from?
so that's originates from Kokon. So this is so South Asia is from um oh my God, you're really questioning me now. I'm forgetting my culture. But
No, it's fine. Like not everyone will know, and
is it
yeah.
Maharashtra? Maharashtra? I
Okay.
think that's where it is.
Yeah.
But
Have you been there?
yeah, it's just no, I haven't. I haven't been. Oh no, hang on, I have. Yes, actually, I went there when I was like 4,
Okay.
so I don't remember much. I really don't remember much at all.
Oh, what do you remember from there?
The only thing I really remember, I think we went there for a wedding. And the only thing I really remember is like they had Coca-Cola in glass bottles.
Haha, beautiful.
I remember that. So whenever I see like a glass fizzy drink now, I just think of India.
Oh,
Um, yeah, that's probably about it, really.
that's amazing. What do you think, like, oh, that's what I've been asking. So I've been asking other participants what their home was laid out like when they were growing up.
Hmm.
Because part of this project is about not only just saying what we remember and how that information has been delivered to us during our lifetimes and how
Hmm.
we culturally intersect with India and East Africa as British subjects or whatever. The other thing is, like we talked about language and how certain words make you feel like you're at home or they make
Yeah.
you feel comforted. So part of that is like remembering, and then part of it is like the imagination. And I don't want to lead you too much, but I would say, I would argue that so much of our memory and our um, family narrative and
Yeah.
family like history and ancestry is formed through the imagination or reimagining of what that was. And I think that sometimes that can come out with our household, how our homes are laid out, architecturally. So yeah, I wonder if you could like describe the house that you grew up in,
Yeah.
and then also compare it to the one that you maybe live in now. So.
Okay. So what I remember quite a lot is the ornaments my parents used to keep, particularly. So they used to have quite an array of ornaments. So from like Arab tea drinking glasses, but I think they're from Saudi Arabia, to like these wooden, like there was this like wooden rooster with eggs. I don't know where it was from, but basically my dad used to travel quite a lot, and he'd always bring back some kind of souvenir from wherever he's come from.
Yeah.
But there was also some things which I thought looked quite African, maybe not East African, but I feel like there was some African influences there, and Arab
Uh-huh.
influences as well. So I think that where I'm a Muslim, where I'm grew up in a Muslim household, obviously we're going to have this Islamic influence in the
Mm.
household as well.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of um like duas written, framed.
Hmm.
Um, what else did we have? The way that we had, I mean, we had a lot of books. I'm trying to think of what sort of cultural things we had. My mom had a lot of spices, but I think that's in every Asian household, like tons and tons of spices and cookbooks. Um, um,
And how was the house laid out,
yeah.
like in terms of rooms?
So we had a front room with the sofas and carpeted. Uh, we didn't have any like, I mean, we had like nice cushions and stuff. Um, they kind of looked a little bit sort of Indian Indian influence there.
Hmm.
Um, and then we had like we had like a second living room, and then like a kitchen diner thing.
Okay.
Um, yeah, we used to have these things on top of the sofa as well. I just remembered. I don't know if this was like a 90s thing or what. We used to have these I don't know what they're called, but they go over the top of the sofa. I think nowadays we would have to have like a nice little blanket, a
Yeah.
throw on top of our sofa. But if any, I think people will know what I'm talking about. But it was just like a bit like what do you call them?
They're like the
Um,
kind of cloths that go
yeah, just
over.
like a fancy cloth just on top of the sofa. And sometimes my mum would even have this plastic gold sort of tacky plastic thing on top of the table as well.
Okay, like placemats.
Yeah, it's like a placemat, but like really shiny and gold and
Yeah.
plasticky, that kind of thing.
And the thing on the sofa, like
Oh yeah.
I've been told that you have those over on the sofa because like it's to protect your sofa from hair gel and grease and stuff like that,
Oh
which
yeah.
I never considered until that, but that's a nice little image in there.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's cool. It's good to know. I know it sounds like a really strange thing, but Um,
This is funny because I'm going back so far. I'm only what 30,
yeah.
but I feel like I'm really trying to go back um to those childhood memories, trying to remember stuff.
Oh, we can come back to it. I was going to ask you. So yeah, we've done kind of the architecture in the home. Ah, okay. I want to ask you some questions around like race and ethnicity, and um, I guess when did you first kind of realize or come to understand your family's connection with East Africa, or let's say that you were East African Asian. When was the first point that you had an awareness of that connection, or I chose to identify in that way?
I believe it was in my early teens because that's when I started sort of questioning a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
So I wanted to know more about myself and also where I'd meet other Asian people and they were not the same as me, like not let alone like the language as well.
Right.
Like I said before, I speak in my family we speak Cockney and it's not a written dialect, so it's not known
Okay.
by many people unless you speak it at home yourself.
Mm.
So I couldn't really relate to Pakistanis who speak Urdu or Bangladeshis, or even like the Gujaratis and stuff. Um, that was hard. So then I started questioning, what are we? Like nobody knows what I'm talking about when I say I'm a Cockney. They're like, what? You're a Londoner. Um,
Yeah.
so then I sort of started asking my dad more questions about where we come from, what it's like back home. Um,
And what did
yeah.
he say when you asked what was it like back home? Like what would he say?
So so I asked him like, how did you come over here? Like, what was it like? Because I remember my dad, he had this in the garage. We had a big garage and we had loads of stuff in there. And there was this big trunk.
Okay.
It's a suitcase, but it was a really old style suitcase. So basically, literally a trunk with like big metal studs on it and stuff. And I was like, oh wow, like, what is this? And this is what he brought over
Wow.
from Africa. Um, and yeah, and then like he talked to me about like how he came over here and he went to university and all this stuff and how hard his life was when he came over here. And and then that's when I asked him like, why did you come here? And yeah, so he would tell me. I think it was because first of all, I think his older brother came over first, and
Mm.
the mum, my grandma. This is what I can remember anyway.
Okay.
And so they came over, and then once they were sort of set up, then he came over,
Okay.
and then I think he just went to university, or he went to do studying. And for my mum, I think she just came over with all of her family. But I think they came from because my mum she moved from Africa, East Africa at a young age with her
Okay.
sisters to India
Hmm.
because they didn't. I don't think my granddad, my mum's dad, felt like it was safe for the girls.
Is that because of his
So
like attitude towards Africans or men in general or what or the system?
so I think so now where I've done a bit of research, things are starting to make sense. So obviously where they're girls, back then they were looked at like more vulnerable. And I think it was two things, maybe the safety, um, and then also like I think maybe they wanted to preserve culture,
Okay.
I think. Because obviously when you're growing up in a country, so like for example me, I'm brought up in England.
Hmm.
The way I talk, if you didn't see the color of my, if you didn't see a picture of me, you wouldn't think I'm Asian. Um, because I've really adapted to where I live
Mm.
and embraced it. Where so I think maybe that was part of it.
Okay.
There may have been some. I mean, I won't go into detail because then I'm telling people stories without getting permission.
Mm.
But I have heard some stories that my mum has told me that I was like, I don't blame your dad for moving you for your safety.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my mum's side of that anyway.
So do you think there was like some trauma associated with why your mum moved from East Africa to India?
Yeah, I think so. But obviously parents don't tell you everything, do they? For good reason as well. They don't want to traumatize you. But
Yeah.
from what I've been told, there were some things that I would probably do the same if I was in that position. If I feel like my kid's safety was at risk,
Yeah.
or if I think that, yeah, in terms of even, even if it was their physical safety or in terms of like them not being able to progress where they were staying,
Hmm.
then I would, if I had the money to, I would move them on.
I'm not going to pry too much because you don't need to like divulge everything, especially because it's
Yeah,
going to be a public recording for an archive.
yeah.
But can you say whether that was in the Asian community or whether that was in the African community? The reason.
Okay,
Mm,
so it was in African community.
okay.
Yeah.
So that was the reason why your mum and her sisters were moved to India to sort of
Um, yeah, yeah.
for their protection. Okay. Do you think like the
She told me that it was for educational purposes,
okay.
but from what I've read now on Wikipedia, if Asian people had their own school, they would have been they would have had good education, right?
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Some things don't make sense. So
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. I hear that. And there's so many things that are hidden and hidden resentments as well. That
yes,
I've
a
not
lot of that.
that's not been worked through. And it's one of the reasons I'm doing this project, just to work through what those resentments are, how
Mm,
intercultural and how intracultural, like how much of it is between different racial groups or how much of it is between one racial group or another. And
right.
there there's so many gaps in terms of history. And then when it comes to, what are we? These questions, what are we? Well, what am I? And being asked, what are you? Where are you really from? And these kind of quite triggering
Yeah,
questions for, people who come from a colonized country or,
yeah,
etc. That can be a really difficult one to answer, especially when your own parents don't know or they they just cannot bear to tell you because it's too traumatic to go into it.
yeah.
Um, and that I think it has been consistent so far with almost everyone that I've spoken to
Oh,
who,
really? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
from East African Asian heritage. Because also what you're saying is, when certain things don't match up, for example, well, you went back to India for education when you were in a British colonial school in
yeah,
East Africa, and you
yeah,
also went there after partition. Why would you do that?
yeah,
So, partition was like this huge, it's the biggest mass migration of people, and in history, in recorded history. It was extremely violent the way that it happened and very traumatic. And we're still, as South Asian people and in different South Asian communities, we're still divided, and there's still a lot of um, intracultural beef going on
yes,
um,
yes.
between, Pakistanis, um,
And Indians.
Indians,
Yeah,
and yeah, Kashmiris, uh, and so yeah, it's difficult to kind of get to the root of these things when there's been a divide and conquer somewhere, and we're still abiding by the divide and conquer. So
mm, yeah,
yeah, no, I appreciate you going into that because I think we forget when we look back on history, we want to put it down to like massive politics or like economics or geography, when actually it could be family on family, interracial. It could be, black on Asian or Asian on black. It could be to do with race. It could be to do with literally just the circumstance that you're in, that builds these resentments in communities.
yeah.
Did you ever feel like, that either the family or the Asian community that you're part of and have been part of, have you felt any significant tensions with black people or people from African diaspora?
Um, uh, when you say diaspora, sorry, what does that mean?
It means like people um that have African or Caribbean, well, let's say African heritage, or let's say black people from African and Caribbean
Okay, I'm
heritage.
with you.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, yeah. The simple answer would be yes, unfortunately. I haven't. I mean, now, like in 2020, I
Mm.
feel like there's been a lot of progress. When I was younger, like in my early teens,
Mm.
um, there was a lot. So I feel like people are moving forward, and because I've seen a lot of interracial marriages between um Indians and or like Asians and black
Mm.
communities. I've seen that happening. And before, it used to be you wouldn't hear about it. But now I'm seeing so much, especially where we've got social media now. I'm seeing so much of it, and it's so nice because I feel like we need to move on from that now
Mm.
to sort of heal. Because yes, it did happen. It happened, and I can see why that generation, like mum and dad's generation, or and above that,
Mm.
they would be really upset and be holding that grudge. But I feel like we do need to move on because now the new generation of um, black people, they're like me, where we're born in this country and we hold that similarity. We're not going to be thinking about what happened in the past and be holding that as a grudge.
No.
I don't think they want to, and I don't want to.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel
I,
like people are trying to move forward now. But back then, yeah, I would 100% agree. I think there is still a little bit because that generation is still there. And
yeah.
I know this sounds really bad. This may sound a bit distasteful, but until they're all gone, I don't think there's going to be much progress.
Really. Do you think there's some things that we can do, um, you know, until it sounds dark, but I know where you're coming from,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you know, in a way, we can't deny them their experiences. They were
yeah,
ethnically expelled from a country, and no matter how much you talk to them about the reason why they were there and the
yeah.
privilege that they had in being there, um, it doesn't take the hurt away, it doesn't take the trauma away.
I
So,
agree. Yeah,
that's why I'm doing this. I really feel like it's down to our generation to do something about like anti-blackness and also interracial tensions between our communities. But
yes,
what do you feel like? Also, because you have children as well, and your family is East African as well.
yeah.
Like, what do you think can be done now in our time, and also what do you hope it to look like for when your children are grown up?
So when my children are grown up, because they are mixed race, so they are half Indian and half African, um, they are right in the middle of it. So when it comes to them maybe getting a partner, wanting to get married, um, or even just making friends, and like when they go to university and trying to integrate with other people and different social circles, I hope that because they are mixed, that they will be very open-minded. And I'm trying to bring them up that way as well, regardless of what they may hear around from like maybe the elders. Um, not saying my mum and dad or anything like that, or my in-laws, but what they could hear. I'm hoping that they will be open-minded and not bring this racist view forward.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's how I feel about that.
Oh, that's good. It sounds like you're doing good work already, thinking
Yeah,
about it.
because it does hurt. It does hurt when you sit back and you think about it properly. You go down this rabbit hole, if you like,
Mm.
and you think, wow, okay, this is really deep. This is very, very deep. Um, and like I was saying, going back to right at the beginning when I was saying about talking about the expulsion of Asians from East Africa,
Mm.
that in particular, how I'm saying I'm sat on the fence,
Mm.
it's because I feel like I need to really stay neutral
Okay.
because to keep the peace as well.
Yeah.
Because I feel the pain from my parents' side, that
Right.
generation. And like you were saying, that they were booted out of their homes. And
Mm.
what about the people that were born there, booted out as well? How do they feel? But then you've got to feel for the natives as well. Um, I could try and make a comparison right now, but maybe it's not appropriate. I mean,
Go
would I
for
be
it,
allowed
and
to?
we'll
Yeah.
discuss it. Yeah, we can. I'm open to discussing these
This is
things.
this is this is about, for example, here in Southampton,
Mm.
we have a very big Polish community.
Mm-hmm.
They have come over and they've made businesses. They're very educated people, very hands-on people. And I met a lot of nice Polish people as well. And I just integrate with them normally. But there has been a time where I was looking for a job and I went into a job agency and apparently it was just for only Polish people. There was no sign on the door saying Polish only or anything like that. But I thought, what year are we in? This is madness. And this is the only time where I felt like being being
Yeah.
a native, or if I can call myself that, um, somebody else coming in and saying, no, you can't have one of our jobs.
Wow.
So yeah, I know it's mad. It's really, really mad because then someone will look at me and think, hang on, you're brown, so but you don't even belong here anyway. So it really goes very, very deep, this whole thing. And I'm glad you're doing this White Tiger project because it's nice to get people's views. I might have my views which people don't agree with, or they might think that maybe I need to shut my mouth or something. But
No,
yeah,
don't. And I think it's important to air these things. I don't feel like anything is taboo. Obviously, I'd never publish anything that was outright bigoted or even just like, yeah, bigoted. Um,
yeah,
because I think it's important that we air these things and discuss them because they can. This is what like where resentment I think can build up in a community.
yes.
I
This is
mean,
yeah, that's what I was trying to, that was
yeah,
sort of what I was trying to say. So this is why I stay on the fence
yeah,
because yeah, I have had this experience, but I think it's to go forward and to bring the next generation
mm,
forward and to make them accepting of everybody. We need to teach them.
it's
Don't hold
difficult.
the grudge.
Yeah, yeah, so true. I hear what you're saying about the agency that only employs Polish workers. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, there's been some chat around this, especially around because we're post Brexit now. Like I started this
Yeah.
project before Brexit.
Well, there's going to be probably you probably have to do another one, but for Polish people.
Well, this is the thing. It's like where the hell does it stop? Like, sorry, but where does it stop?
Yeah.
There were many Polish workers that were, similar thing really, from what I understand. And I'm not
Yeah.
thoroughly researched why I'm doing this as part of my research, but they Polish workers were brought over on a labour export policy, and it's similar to the Asians being brought to East Africa and other parts of the world like Trinidad, Jamaica.
Yeah.
Where else? Taken everywhere on a labour export policy, and it's like, well, who's profiting off this? Because that was bonded labour. It was up to 5 years, and the Asians were told that they could leave after 5 years. But of course, what you earn in that
Mm.
time, is that enough to leave that country? And of course,
Yeah.
you've settled, you've had children, etc. And I think when it comes to our modern times now and Polish workers coming to the UK and opening businesses and doing their thing, um, and many staying here.
Yeah.
But there are also many, especially like, around Brexit time, many who voted for Brexit so that Polish workers could go back to Poland and rebuild their
Mm.
economy. And a lot of
Yeah.
people are like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Why
Mm.
would they vote for Brexit? It actually might work in their favour because so many of their own people are in the UK earning money, giving the UK their money, and
Yeah.
they wanna obviously take their money back home, don't they? Like so.
Yeah, and this is what happened in the expulsion. Like there was a Great Depression in Uganda
Hmm.
because all the businesses got closed down. It's just like ghost
Okay.
town.
Wow.
So yeah, you have to be very careful. This is one thing. If we can just all, I'm living in a dream world probably, but if we can all just move on now, just try in yourself,
Yeah.
clean your hearts, and just move on now. Get on with life. The way that life is now in 2020 as well with this coronavirus,
Hmm.
we're gonna have to start building up again and supporting each other.
Yeah, I think that is very important. And what do you think about also? I don't know if you have a view on it,
Hmm.
or if you feel the same, or towards the recent
The
like a
movement.
yeah, it's the Black Lives Matter movement that is kind of rising up again, or it's coming to more prominence now because it's been going a while, but we're really in the heat of it. Everyone's talking about it, and it's becoming very widespread. So, in this discussion of like Black Lives Matter, how do you obviously you're in a biracial or interracial family.
Yeah.
Um, how where do you position yourself in that, and how do you kind of navigate it as a British Asian woman?
Okay, so this did cause a little bit of arguments because my husband is black, but I support Black Lives Matter because Black lives have to matter before all other lives can matter. Um, and I do believe in that very strongly. What I was feeling a little bit upset about was that I don't believe I have any white privilege because I'm brown, and I believe white people look at brown and black people as the same thing. And I don't believe we have any favor, that we don't get any kind of leg over than the other one. So I was feeling a little bit lost in that, and especially like in my household as well, trying to support my husband and how he was feeling during this time because it's really upsetting, especially for someone who is black, seeing what's happening to their people, what's been going on for years and years,
Mm.
what's happening. Um, but then I was still feeling like a little bit like, okay, maybe we need to start standing up for ourselves too,
Yeah,
because I feel like Asian people are looked at like clowns,
like
and
clowns. Mm.
like clowns, yeah. And also when I feel like also we've been used,
Okay.
and what happened in East Africa was a prime example because we were used
Mm.
as a go-between the white and the black.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. And it's to avoid that happening again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny because yeah, there's a certain amount of people like me who have this kind of privilege, if you like, because they see themselves like that. So if they keep this racist view about black people, they feel like they're going to stay in that privileged status.
Mm.
Just they're like, okay, we can't be the white man, but we'll just be a little bit underneath them. That's okay, fine. At least we're not as bad as that as black people. We won't be as low as that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like
Right.
if we join them, then we're going to be at the bottom of the pile with them.
Right. And what do you think of that attitude?
Um, I just think it's disgusting because you're going against really you're you should be on that side. You
Yeah,
should be on
in
the
it.
side of the black people, of the minority. You are a minority. You're living in a dreamland. If you think you have any kind of privilege, you're a joke. I think you're a joke. Sorry, I mean,
Preeti
people like Miss
Patel.
American. Yeah, yes, prime example, prime example. And there's a lot of people like that in power that are doing that. Not just Asian, either Arab too.
Yeah.
But that's like another story. That's another discussion to be had. But I think people are opening their eyes now to it, and it's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad because, like I said, the I call them call them the dinosaur generation. They are moving on forward now.
Yeah.
God bless them. And now we, like our age group, like from like 20 onwards or whatever,
Yeah.
up to 40, I feel like we have seen both sides now, and we're now bringing up the next generation. So I think we'll be able to do a really good job in moving people forward
Yeah.
in their thinking. And this Black Lives Matter movement, um, although I did have a little bit of a wobble, and I felt like, well, what about me? My house is on fire too. um, but not as badly burnt as theirs. I'm supporting them. So I went to the protest as well where I live because my children they're half black as well. And we are minority.
So I'm going to stand for the minority. That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
Okay. That's really good to know. And it's also, I think this is the second interview I've done. Um, Interestingly, this is the first interview I've done in the south of England. I've done some in the Midlands, and the others have been in London. And in London, there's a very specific, um, like demarcation between who's Asian, who's black, and who's white, and who's mixed race.
Right. Okay.
Who's a minority, who has privilege over the other. I think, personally speaking, when it comes to Asian people,
Yeah.
they're the mainstream or the dominant idea is that we have more privilege than black people.
Yeah.
And I think that differs from central London to not to Leicester and to the south coast and to other areas. And as you say, they're, in your opinion, white people see you and your black partner as the same, or they see
Yeah.
Asians and black people as just the other. Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting to hear you say that and to say that so bravely as well.
Because we're called coloured, aren't we? We're
Yeah,
coloured people. Yeah.
yeah,
Of colour. So like that's how I think the majority of people look at it.
yeah, yeah. And there has been like a distinction recently, I guess, amongst like academics and the black middle class, I'm going to say, and maybe the
Hmm.
Asian middle class as well, that the people of colour has now been also subcategorized again as black people of colour, to distinguish the the fact that to many people black lives don't matter at all, and when it comes to distinguishing between people of color and black people of color, there is that distinction. um
Yeah.
but I hear where you're coming from as well, and I'm not going to disagree with you, and I'm not going to attempt to like educate you or anything like that, because
Yeah.
I feel like we all deserve to have our say in this conversation. This isn't about me schooling anyone.
Yeah.
um um yeah, and I've seen this as well. Like, to respond to what you're saying about having a bit of a wobbly and being like, what about me? Um, and I've had to like I have had to interject on a couple occasions, because I hear where you're coming from, and it's having the language to talk about it and to say respectfully, yes, I
Yeah.
do have your back. Yeah, I do stand with you. Yes, Black Lives Matter, and we need to make sure that matters before anything else matters. We're with you at the same
Yeah.
time, and please respect at the same time. I am triggered. I am traumatized. I'm still healing from Sandra Bland and da da da, etc.
Yeah.
As well, I know it probably hurts you in a way I cannot understand, cannot ever imagine. I'm still reeling from the fact that I cannot run for a bus. I'm still reeling when I get on a train and I hear, if you hear anything suspicious, please. And I'm
Yes.
still reeling from the fact that my brown face gets stalked in shops.
Yes.
And I think and it's not about like, yeah, but we, yeah, but me. What about da da da? It's not that. It's going, I can help you as much as I can. I will help you as much as I can. I
Mm.
need to take time for myself as well, because I am traumatized. I am triggered as well.
Yeah.
And as long as we can just like look inwards and outwards at the same time, then we can show up for black people right now, because they really need that.
Yeah.
and
They
it,
really need that. Yeah.
and if anyone
I
can
agree.
understand, it's us. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, Polish people, whoever's been in silos having to deal with racism,
Yes. Yeah.
um, and for the people that will never understand, you know,
Yeah.
life will just, take care of them. I don't mean that in a threatening way, but life will just show them um, that they're going to be outnumbered. So yeah, I totally appreciate you saying that, and I think it takes bravery to just be like, not trying to say like, what about me? I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
actually, I'm hurting for you, I'm hurting with you, and I'm also just hurting as well
Yeah. Yeah.
in my own
So
cause.
I say I'm sympathizing with you because I I feel like a percentage of what you're feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I really like that you're on this idea of, we need to do more so that we don't get used again, and so we don't get taken as clowns, and that we value ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I think, and a big part of it has to start in our own homeland, if you know what I mean. So like in India and back home, we need to sort of start there, and then it will filter outwards, because we can't stand up for ourselves and say, look, treat us fairly if we are treating our own people unfairly as well. I think this is one of the big problems. Like we're not showing that we're respecting one another or our own kind. So
okay,
then it's like going back to, people will treat you how you treat yourself or treat
yeah.
others and stuff like that. So it's a really deep problem. But inshallah, if I can say inshallah,
Inshallah.
things will get better.
Okay, so you think it needs to start in the place of origination that we most recognize as the place of origination. So that would be India for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
but like they need to show they're respecting themselves and their people, the way they treat their own people, you know?
Yeah.
Because otherwise they'll be like, oh, see, this is why we don't respect Asian and black, because look at how they treat their own people anyway, beating them and leaving them living on the street, and um like the kind of laws that they have for them. So then white people will look and say, yeah, this is why we leave them out, we single them out, because they're weird. They have weird ideas and ideologies, and you know,
Mm, okay. So so you think Modi could have a part to play in this? And
yeah, a lot of them people in power, a lot of them,
yeah.
if they respect their people that they are in their own countries, I think
Yeah.
that will speak very loudly
What
to the rest
about
of
like
the world.
Asian communities in this country? How do you think we could begin treating one another?
Um, so I think, like I said before, I think things are moving on a bit now. In terms of people being more aware of being respectful to one another. When I was in my sort of early teens, I felt a lot of
You've gone quiet. 1 second.
oh
You want to start that again? In terms of Asian people and how
yeah,
we treat each other in this country.
in terms of um how Asian people treat one another, I believe that we are getting better at it in terms of respecting one another. When I was in my early teens, I felt that wasn't the case. We were at competition with one another. I
Right.
felt like that. Yeah. So if
Okay.
we can remove that element of competition and hold each other up, smile at one another, don't just stare each other out on the street. Like even with black people, I've seen with my husband, if even if he sees another black guy, he doesn't know him, there'll be this kind of nod
Okay.
of respect to one another, and that's really nice. So I feel like if we can do that, even when you see two English people, white people on the street, they all kind of nod at each other, say good morning or whatever, and we've adapted that here in the community where we live.
Okay.
Even being of color, we will just like be like good morning, hello, just to a random stranger, just respectfully.
That's lovely. And you think that can go a long way?
Yeah, I think people just need to just forget the grudge, move on, and just teach the young ones that we are all the same. We all bleed blood, and we are all the same. We all feel the same feelings.
You're listening to the White Tiger Project. I'm Alia Patan. To listen to previous recordings, go to whitetigerproject.co.uk. To send in a contribution, you can email whitetigerprojectuk@gmail.com.